Welcome to Carl and Rick Talk Risk. Rick, how are you doing this week?
Yo, as the old guy here, I'm going to have as my objective today to prove that I am not senile. But anyhow, let's go.
A timely reference, Rick. After last night's debates, there are some questions. Let's
Hey,
say that.
man, I'm just leaving it open. I'm not saying anything about anything. I'm just, I'm here. I'm solid. I can occasionally finish sentences.
Yeah,
Uh, there is a problem. I don't golf, but when I do
yeah.
golf, actually pretty decent. But let's go.
Okay, we'll leave the handicap competition to another day and argue about that. Um, well, Rick, we haven't prepared a full-on episode today, but that's fine because we're
Have
always
we
reading.
ever?
I no, we have. I'm trying to keep up appearances with the audience here. But no, we generally don't prepare, but we always read something of interest that catches our eye. And I've actually read a couple of articles this week that I think were interesting. And let's see if they pique your interest or if you have a different take on them because yeah, I think they're kind of signs of the times sorts of articles, and they're definitely within our wheelhouse. You'll see what I mean. So the first one, towards the beginning of this week, so I don't remember as much of it, was Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon's the CEO of the biggest bank in America, which must be the biggest in the world, I'm guessing. Um, and he's also got his finger on the pulse of the culture. Um, and that part I find very interesting because he's sort of I think he's sort of a good risk manager in a way. He understands culture and society and what's going on, and he relates that to financial markets. So for that reason, Jamie's very interesting to me. Um, he was at a roundtable recently for business leaders in New York City, and he was talking about how the school to work pipeline is broken. That every year, this group of companies, I think it's 30 or 40, they try to hire underprivileged from underprivileged communities that haven't all been to university before. And of course, they hire many graduates from Columbia University and all the big names in NYC, and they're just not finding the skill sets that they need to do their jobs, right? And it's a mixture of hard and soft skills. So the things we've spoken about, the things you should be learning in business school and risk management programs. Um, so this caught my eye, and he's trying to make sure that universities start filling this gap, that high schools start understanding what the workforce needs, the mixture of skills they need. Not quite sure how he's doing that. That's beyond the scope of the article. But I thought it was interesting that such a prominent businessman is saying, hey, something is really broken here. We need to fix this, or we can't run our companies like we'd like to. And that means offshoring, right? That means possibly hiring from elsewhere. It means maybe people staying in jobs longer. I mean, there's only so many things you can do without fresh brains coming in and contributing to these companies. What do you think? Any
Oh my gosh! Like I mean, I just before you started this, I said I don't have a lot of time today. Of course, the reason we didn't have a podcast last week was, of course, I should say, of course, but I was in the UK presenting at a conference a paper on basically how B school is broken. I'm not familiar with the comments that Jamie said that you referenced. I agree with your assessment that he seems he's one of the CEOs that I think is uh, he's one of the CEOs that I admire, who I think is in touch
yeah,
with the real world rather than the rarefied world of that CEOs tend to populate. I thought it was
yeah,
pretty interesting reading his biography way back when he was at uh, where was he at before he got there? After he got shunted out by what's his name? But yeah, when he got fired, I want to say Nations Bank or whatnot. Before he got on at Nations Bank, so that's probably not it. And now, of course, people are saying that I'm not fit to be president. I don't want to be president. But in his biography, he goes, um, when he basically got canned from his role at it was Shearson, I think. His daughter came and said, now that you've been fired, can I have your cell phone? So I think that having daughters keeps you well grounded. Um, at this conference, again, I was with a co-author literally presenting a paper how B schools are broken and how AI is uh, giving us an opportunity to see how it's broken. The school to work pipeline, uh, I'm on, I think that there's at least two sides to that. One is school in part and only in part should be the training ground for work/profession.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I assume his comments were in the context of K-12. I'm going to extend it to K through university as well, not that university is absolutely necessary. One of the problems that we have is the perception that school is to provide you a job. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that should be very low down. Well, it should be on the priority list, but not top of the priority list. School should be teaching you how to think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Uh, in my opinion, school has totally abandoned thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Is totally abandoned uh, thinking. It's totally abandoned inducing the love of learning. I would say that the second thing in an idealistic world would that school would foster the love of learning. I think it does anything but. In fact, I think
Mm-hmm.
it does the opposite. And so we have this perception that, oh, I graduated, whether it's from kindergarten, whether it's from high school, whether it's from trade school, whether it's from university. I
Yeah.
graduated. Okay, I'm going to basically park my brain for the next 25 years, get the gold watch. I don't know what they do now when you retire, but I'm going to get the pension plan, and then I might turn my brain on again.
Mm-hmm.
But because I graduated, I am entitled to a job, and I'm entitled to basically sit on my posterior, even though it is quite broad and quite good for sitting on. And that's all I have to do to drift off into the golden sunset. I
Yeah.
think that uh, there's a whole set around values, and I'm not talking necessarily about religious values or
Mm-hmm.
necessarily about morals, but there's values about what it means to be a good worker. There's values about what it means to be a good citizen. Um, I believe that there's a training responsibility of companies. And again, I'm slightly biased on that, having been a senior executive in training at two former institutions I was at. And AI is really uh, putting the magnifying glass uh, on on these elements. Again, I didn't hear or read Dimon's comments on that, but
Yeah.
man, but by the way, just one thing before I shut up and let you go, or go on, is this has been something that's been said about virtually any generation.
Yeah. That's true.
But I think that we have a couple of things now that make it truly unique.
Yeah. And I don't want, I could come back on a lot. I think we'll get into it in future podcasts, but I would agree. And I think anybody who's watched more than three of our episodes knows we talk about this a lot, and we cite sources like, Jonathan Haidt's book on depression rates and all kinds of stuff in the generation now coming into the workforce and struggling with it. So I think we're not saying that subjectively. There's data behind it.
I was at another conference late last year,
Yep.
and this was an industry conference, not an academic conference. Uh, and I was shocked to hear the uh, basically the intake directors, I the HR people responsible for onboarding uh, new students, say
Yeah.
that they were shocked and dismayed
Mm.
with uh, what they were onboarding, and it was because of bad recruiting, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But they are literally having to rethink. And by the way, none of the other panelists, this was a panel discussion, none of the other panelists discussions disagreed in any way. But this one institution went on at length about how they're having to totally change their onboarding process, their onboarding training, uh,
Oh,
to not only extend it, but to also add elements that of training uh, that they took as table stakes
right.
since the beginning of time.
Right.
Um, in an age in which uh, the workforce is being fundamentally changed by technology, uh, learning, I've said this a gazillion times, knowledge is a complete unmitigated commodity. Learning, passion, empathy, values, those are the true academic skills. And I mean academic, not in terms of irrelevant, um, but those are the true academic skills that we need to be developing in our educational system. And
Yeah.
instead, we get into silly arguments about whatever.
Yeah. No,
I
exactly.
won't open that can of worms, but I think everyone and their dog knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, exactly. Okay. I'm going to skip one of my articles because I don't want us to go too long, and I know you're on limited time. Um, so the other one, yeah, I don't know how interested you'll be in it. I was reading about the Indian stock market, and the Indian stock market has been really hot for the past few years. They're growing like mad, and what's happened is that um, retail investors have got into derivatives, and the proportion of retail investors in the derivatives market has gone from under 5% to 41% now. I guess that's based on notional value of the derivatives. I don't know. Hopefully, it's not on another measure that wouldn't make as much sense. But 41% is pretty substantial. I think you'd agree. You'd expect institutions to be the majority of the derivatives market. Obviously, the problem there is retail investors don't understand fully the risks that they're taking on. They're trying to speculate in a hot stock market with derivatives that you only need to post margin for. You don't need to put in the full amount. Um, and the other reason this was a little interesting to me, besides the speculative bit, is that brokers and financial intermediaries who are enabling these trades are using influencers to attract retail investors to these products, to their, to come and trade on their platforms. So you've sort of got the roaring kitty Wall Street bets effect there, where there's a a trade being created, like a whole crowd is going into a single trade for not a lot of reason, right? Just on somebody's say so, and a lot of people are getting into it. Obviously, India is becoming wealthier and wealthier. Um, and yeah, I thought it was interesting. I also kind of related it to China and how a lot of sort of mom and pop investors got big into the housing market, invested a lot of new developments. And it's now said that China has more than 100 million extra homes that they don't know what to do with. And therefore, the housing market's sort of at least flatlining. It has crashed a bit. And yeah, most households in China have more than 90% of their wealth tied up in real estate. Again, a bit of a problem, a bit of a sort of, something's hot and everybody gets into it effect. I don't know if you have anything to say on this. I don't really have anything more to say on it. I just found it interesting and I want to track this a little bit over the next couple of weeks.
Uh, First off, I don't have much to say about it, and I probably said way too much on the previous topic, and so there's no one listening to this podcast anymore. The influencers, hey, I'm into the what was it, E Trade or I Trade or whatever, baby. That's who I follow,
Yeah.
man. We've always had the influencers. Okay, it's just now it's a little bit more formalized. But here's
Yeah.
the thing. Uh, Given the evidence, is it really all that different following, whatever the guy with the stupid red hat is?
Yeah,
Uh,
Roaring Kitty.
yeah, than your stockbroker who's trying to do a churn and burn. Um,
Yeah.
uh, as for the derivatives, I actually really don't have a problem with that
Yeah.
because the point is with the derivatives, you're going to learn quicker, if nothing else, and uh, ultimately, I believe that people. Ultimately, I believe in people as
Mhm.
much as I rag on them, and yeah, I don't have anything coming. Move on.
Okay. Well, let's see if it goes anywhere else. The Indian regulator SEBI is watching this as a potential systemic risk. If it goes any further, I guess the ability for large losses to kind of spread across the system and take down brokerages. But yeah, it's kind of a crossroads between a few things going on with like the rise of digital influences, growing wealth in developing countries, what asset classes the people there get into. But we'll return to it another time. Rick, maybe that's a good place to stop. I can hear my son outside the door wanting to go for a walk, and he's not quiet, believe me. Uh, okay,
I
we'll
gotta go
stop
work
there.
on my golf handicap. So
Hey,
anyhow,
yeah, do that.
I'll let you go. Have a good one,
Okay,
everyone.
till next time. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.